This chapter was amazing. I mean, that goes without saying, and I think one of the things that made it so was the fact that Oda was really good about distributing the attention amongst the Fire Tank Pirates, the Big Mom Pirates, and the Vinsmoke Power Rangers. Dun, 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 dun. I'll get into that. But first, we have Bartolomeo in the cover page. So I knew the chapter was going to be good just because we're nearing the climax of the arc. But it was just such a like a breath of fresh air to have Bartolomeo there on the cover page. We see him; he's very tiny there. He's arriving at a port, but it doesn't seem like the people of that town are going to be very welcoming, especially because there's one guy with the Denden Mushi. He's just like very, very concerned, looking like, hey, Bartolomeo just arrived with the Luffy Go. I think that's what the ship is called, right? The Luffy Go? The fan club is here. So I wonder who that guy is calling. He better not be calling the Marines, because then that's going to be a problem. We start off with Luffy fanboying with the star eyes, which is kind of like the same way that Oda shows him fanboying over Frankie, or sometimes even over food and meat. Sugoi! Anyway, everybody's running, trying to get into the Big Father Fortress, and we see this giant hand just snatch Brulee from Caesar's back, and at first I thought, is that Big Bomb? But no, it's Katakuri with the Mochi Mochi no Mi. By the way, he takes out his jelly beans, clears out the fodder, he takes out a couple of Capone's men. In the same page, we see him with his weapon. Turns out it's actually kind of like a pitchfork, or like a trident, like Neptune. And by the way, can we just agree on the fact that Katakuri is the employee of the month for the Big Mom Pirates? Literally the only character from the Big Mom Pirate side that has been consistently putting in an effort, alright, in managing this crisis ever since it broke out is Katakuri. And we don't really see him after that until the end of the chapter, but I guess that's where he's busy off screen plugging up the cannons with the mochi so that once they fire, they begin blowing up from the inside. Meanwhile, Oven goes for Chopper, Daifuku goes for Carrot, and Smoothie goes for Nami. Now, I'm not going to make any assumptions. I'll just say that this is not the first time that Smoothie has wanted to juice a woman. So I'll just leave it at that. Not going to make any assumptions. If you roll that way, you roll that way. It's all good. So I have to say that I don't know how much of this is there to give the Vinsmokes that epic moment. But I will say that I am a little bit disappointed, especially in Carrot, for being caught so easily. Especially because she was able to dodge a slash from Zoro. But again, pretty sure that this needed to happen. They needed to get caught to give the Vinsmokes their moment. That being said, right, there is this epic page of absolutely no dialogue. Sanji still standing on the table. He's been standing on that table for a while. And just pure gestures. He's like, nobody from the Vinsmokes has to say a word. They understand exactly what Sanji means. And I like how Niji is looking at Ichiji, and Ichiji's kind of like the one who actually just, decides to follow the command. He's like, let's do this. I can't wait for that transformation sequence to get animated, because they're going to take their time with it. And so their clothes just gets ripped off. This thing starts wheezing, and the transformation begins on some Sailor Moon type of stuff, because you see the suits kind of wrap around their bodies. That Reiju panel, though, on the bottom right. That Reiju panel, though. And you can tell this guy with the fiery hair actually shoots an attack at them. They completely tank it, alright? And they're just standing there like bosses. Even Judge, who was looking like a bitch not too long ago. He looks pretty badass with his spear and stuff. And it's just such a great panel of the team, of Germa Double 6 standing there like badasses. Great shading in regards to that panel. And then Pedos like, okay, I'm just going to use my candy on you guys again. They blitz the candy. The candy doesn't even touch them. And I've been an Ichiji fan from very early on. Pretty much ever since he was introduced. Maybe not that soon, but pretty early on in the arc. And the reason for that is because I got this vibe from him, this very quiet vibe. And usually in anime, it's the quiet ones that you want to look out for. And I said this in previous reviews, I kind of get this Rob Lucci, kind of like Itachi type of vibe of a character from him. So I wasn't surprised to see that once I turned the page, he was landing a hit on Pero, the first son, and his eyes were completely white, alright? And by the way, from those panels of the Vinsmokes fighting the Big Mom Pirates, you can pretty much tell how strong the Vinsmokes are based on the reactions of their opponents. Alright, Ichiji just straight up like, get the I seriously, if Ichiji had stayed there, because remember, they're not trying to fight, they're trying to escape, help out Nami and Chopper and Carrot. If they had stayed there, I guarantee you Ichiji would have won that fight, no problem. I was actually more surprised by Yonji and the fact that he was able to push down Daifuku with one hand, because we know that, Yonji and Sanji fought, and Sanji beat his ass. Also, I don't know if you know this, but Ichiji's voice actor is the same voice actor for Sasuke. So, you don't give a man Sasuke's voice, for no reason. Beiju actually lands a poison kick on Smoothie, and that actually frees up Nami. So that's pretty valuable, very important. And I also think it's important to remember that out of the opponents that the Vinsmokes are fighting in that one page, Smoothie is technically the strongest and the toughest one. She's one tier above everybody else, all the other opponents, because she's a sweet commander. So just the fact that Reiju was able to free Nami is pretty impressive. And then unfortunately, by the end of the chapter, we see Smoothie squeezing herself to drain the poison from herself. So I thought that was kind of cool of Oda to show that. Also, Pero does not get knocked out. Initially, I thought he was KO'd, but no. Imagine like a one-shot on Pero. No, he's out and about, and he actually blocks some cannon fire from Capone to protect Big Mom. So those are some durability feats for the Big Mom Pirates to take note of. That being said, once Nami is freed from Smoothie's clutches, Sanji comes in, they're just swooping in out of nowhere to catch Nami bridal style, and I can already hear the Sanami screams, alright? The Sanami fangirl screams out in the distance. I actually heard them inside of my head while I was reading that page. I will say that I think it's a very, very interesting choice from Oda, that normally, if this had happened in a normal context, Sanji would be having those hard eyes and just completely gushing over Nami. Instead, in that panel, he's just giving her a very sincere smile. I thought that was interesting. I also want to give credit to Oda because he completely played the fan base. Alright, he fooled us all in regards to the role of the Tamate Bako box. We all thought it was going to explode in Big Mom's face. Well, not all of us, but I thought that, okay? I thought that. But no, Dufel tries to open it, Big Mom sends it flying, and it's off. It falls from the tower. Notice how we don't actually see it land. And I'm pretty sure that once that thing makes contact with some solid surface, it's probably gonna blow up. I guess it depends on how strong the explosion is, how powerful it is. But let's say if it is powerful, I could definitely see it like, maybe not destroying the tower, but maybe cracking part of the tower at the top, and part of that like just breaking off. Because remember, Capone can't move. He's stuck because of Pero's candy, and they're surrounded. So it would make sense that if this explosion is big enough, it creates a crack. Maybe that kind of creates a scenario that kind of helps the Straw Hats out. And maybe it doesn't fall down like a tree this way. Maybe it falls down vertically like this. Like kind of like a platform, just crashing into everything else down below. Trying to come up with scenarios that would help the Straw Hats escape this current predicament, because they can't use the mirrors anymore because Brulee's not with them. If you look at page 17, that page with the Big Mom Pirates, you see Panda Man there right next to Pero. And what's funny is that not only is Panda Man there, but he's right next to the girl that wears the panda suit. And then in that same page at the bottom, inside Capone's castle, inside the fortress, if you look at the background at the back, we see, I think it's Vito fanboying over Ichiji. Because we know Vito's like a Vinsmoke fanboy. That's one of the reasons why they wanted to save them from the massacre. By the way, I almost forgot. In the panel where Sanji saves Nami, there's a shot of Pudding, and I'm pretty sure Oda didn't show her expression because I think she's mad jelly about that. So maybe that was part of the intention of the panel, to sort of like get Pudding to think about her feelings for Sanji. I also want to point out something that this chapter helped me become aware of that I was not aware of in the previous chapter, and that's just how massive Capone's castle form actually is. Big Mom's a big bitch, alright? But when you compare the size of Capone's castle to Big Mom, it's insanely big, okay? And he says it's sturdy, like it's okay, but I mean against Big Mom, I mean this thing is nothing. Like it's just, she's just ripping this thing apart. And it's so sad because Capone is bleeding. I mean the castle is part of like an extension of his body. It's actually his real body. Kind of reminded me of Ace a little bit because despite the fact that you have this amazing ability, like it's still a part of your body and you still suffer damage. So yeah, it's really bad. Capone is bleeding really bad. So if this keeps going, I mean, he's probably gonna die. There'll only be like 10 supernovas left after this, if this keeps going. However, in that final page, there's this one small panel of Sanji thinking, And we know that Sanji is also a pretty good strategist. In fact, Sanji is the reason for why the Straw Hats were able to escape Enies Lobby. So I kind of get the feeling that he's coming up with some type of a way of escaping. And remember, we still have the Germa soldiers, the Germa army in reserve. So that's something that could help us out. But I don't think they can get to the top of the tower in time. In fact, in that panel where Sanji is thinking, you can kind of see that he's lost in thought, but he also looks kind of gloomy, kind of sad. So what I think, I've said this, I think somebody's going to have to stay behind. That's just the feeling that I get. Or somebody can show up and then just completely just throw a curveball in this. But I'm kind of leaning more towards like somebody's going to have to stay behind. I definitely think things are about to get crazier though. That's it for me. I thought this chapter was fantastic. Thank you so much for watching. Like the review if you did. Subscribe to my channel for more One Piece reviews. Comment down below with your thoughts. Thank you guys. Bye.